Thank you. Thank you for having me. So, I suppose I'm going to talk about two things. First of all is the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and then the link between trans and neurodiversity. In the 24 years that I've been working with the gender dysphoric population, I realised that there's four groups. It's not one thing, it's very heterogeneous, but within that heterogeneity there's four groups. There's people who were formerly called true transsexuals who believed that they were in the wrong body. There are people, and they're a very small number. There's a huge number of what we used to call transvestites, and these people didn't have a gender dysphoria. They knew that they were, say, men, but they got something out of dressing up. And you could divide them into the fetishistic and the non-fetishistic. The fetishistic were the ones who got sexually turned on or would masturbate, and the ones who didn't get sexually turned on but got excited by it were the non-fetishistic ones. And there's always been a much greater proportion of transvestites than transsexuals, although we don't seem to talk about them anymore because they're all called trans. And then there's a very small group of people, autogynephiles, some of the gender critical people confuse autogynephiles with fetishist transvestites. The autogynephile is a man who has the sexual fantasy of having female bodily parts. So it's nothing to do with cross-dressing, although they can cross-dress. It's purely the sexual fantasy of having vaginas and breasts. So there's always been more transvestites, a smaller number of transsexuals, and a tiny amount of AGP, autogynephiles. And now there's a new group, the rapid onset gender dysphoric kids. And I've always said, this isn't a gender dysphoria, this is a subculture. And with these kids, people have heard me say this a million times, there's always been subcultures since the Second World War. You've had rockabillys, rockers, hippies, mods, punks, goths, and it was up until the advent of social media, it was always based in music. So up until social media, the whole point of being a teenager is you subvert what you've been told and you find yourself. And it was music based. Then social media came along. Music didn't have that function. It was all in your social media profiles. And so, in a bit like when, I will say this, when Jenny turned up at school with backcombed hair and eyeliner and purple lipstick and going, you're so cool, what are you? I'm a goth. We all became goths. Now, someone looking like Jenny goes to school, they go, what are you? I'm trans non-binary. And the whole school, they haven't caught it. It's not a vector-borne infection. They haven't caught this illness. It's just the cool thing to be. So the cool thing to be is non-binary trans. But the difficulty is that we mistakenly presume it's a medical condition, and then we put them down a conveyor belt of chemical castration. And I go as far as saying that castration is the new backcombing, really. My hair fell out because I backcombed it so much. And then the link between trans and neurodiversity, what I found is that the people who were actually believing that they were the wrong sex, not the transvestites, not the AGPs, but the ones who believed they're the wrong sex, were, from my experience, the males were 100% neurodiverse. The females were a mixture between neurodiverse trauma and internal lesbophobia. But they had a very rigid black and white mindset, very inflexible, not able to be subversive like a punk can, but they have very definite rule-abiding behaviour. They don't have the theory of mind to be able to envisage that someone else might not see them as a woman if they're wearing long dresses, long hair and makeup. They have autistic meltdowns when you don't get their pronouns correct. And the thing about pronouns is really interesting because the pronoun isn't just a word. Because the autistic person struggles to know what you think in relation to them, if you use the pronoun that they want you to use, that means you really believe that they are the new sex. So you misgendering them, calling them referring to them as their biological sex, isn't just a careless mistake. It means, gosh, you don't really see me as the new gender I want to be. So that's why the massive importance on pronouns. You must use my pronouns, because that means you really believe that I am the sex I want to be, rather than it's just a word. So that's a very autistic thing. And then you get the autistic meltdown when you're not using the correct pronouns. So there's a massive overlap with what we used to call true transsexualism and autism, but not in the transvestites and not in the autogynephiles and not in the ROGD kids who were just goth Mark 5, I'd say.
Thank you very much.